Welcome my YouTube channel, Stoic, Powerful Habits. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do this, they'll beg you to come back even. If they're with someone else, Tilda. Stoic, Powerful Habits. If you've ever felt discarded, replaced, forgotten. Like a phase, they moved on. Maybe they're even with someone else. Now you need to hear this. Do not chase. Do not explain. Do not try to show them your worth. Because if you do what I'm about to tell you, they will beg to come back. But here's the twist. By the time they do, you won't need them anymore. Because what pulls someone back is not your presence. It's your absence with purpose. 1. Be silent. Fully when they expect you to cry, explain, beg, or even lash out. Go silent. Not out of spite, but from clarity. Because silence isn't weakness. It's a message. It says, I do not chase. I attract. If you want me, you come to me. Your silence burns deeper than words ever could. They'll watch their messages sit unread, their calls unanswered. And that space, that void, it becomes unbearable. Not to you, but to them. To detach emotional stoicism isn't being heartless. It's having a heart so disciplined it does not kneel to chaos. You don't react, you reflect. You don't chase, you evolve. And the more you detach from needing them, the more they start needing you. Because emotional detachment is magnetic. When you stop giving your energy freely, they start craving it. Point 3. Level up in silence. They left. Maybe they downgraded. Maybe they moved on to a new distraction. But you went inward. You rebuilt yourself when no one was watching. You got stronger, calmer, smarter. You turned heartbreak into heat. And that transformation, it echoes in the late nights when they're with someone else but thinking of you. Because no one can fake the aura of a man who's done the inner work to form, become mysterious again. They thought they had you figured out. Routine, predictable. Always there now. You're unreadable. You're not posting to prove anything. You're not available like before. You're not where they left you. You're everywhere but nowhere they can reach. Mystery rekindles desire. They will wonder, what's he doing? Who's he with? Why doesn't he care? And the more they wonder, the more they miss point 5. Kill the need for validation. You don't need to prove you moved on. Just move. You don't need to act. Happy, you become peace. The Stoic doesn't beg for closure. He is the closure. He doesn't ask why someone left. He says, thank you for giving me space to evolve. That energy taunts people. They don't forget it because they can't replace it. 6. Your growth becomes the revenge, not words. It's not rebound games. Not dramatic posts, results. That's what makes them spiral. They see you calm, confident, focused, glowing, and in their heart. They feel it. I lost a man who became everything I ever wanted. After I left, that sting, it's silent, but it lasts forever. 7. Indifference is the final blow. You don't hate them. You don't love them. You outgrew them. And when they return, because they often do, not because they love you, but because your energy is addictive, you don't reject them with rage. You welcome them with indifference. The smile that says, you're late. I've already moved on. And that's the moment they truly break. Because nothing cuts deeper than being replaced by peace. Asterisk, if you want them to. Beg for you. Don't ask for it. Become the man they lost and can never replace. Don't wait for a text. Don't stalk their page. Don't try to make them jealous. That's emotional poverty. Be silent. They're disciplined. Be dangerous in your growth. They'll feel your absence. They'll regret. They'll return. But by then, you'll be too rare to need them. Asterisk, you are not what you feel. That is the first illusion the world has placed before you. The moment you begin to identify with emotion, you become a servant to it. You are not anger. You are not longing. You are not fear or desire. You are the observer, the awareness, the imagination behind these waves. Emotional detachment does not mean becoming cold or unfeeling. It means awakening to your true nature, where you are no longer dragged like a puppet by each sensation, but rather become the master who watches and chooses. There is immense power in the space between a stimulus and your response. In that space lies all freedom. When you learn to dwell in that space, you stop reacting to others and begin acting from your center. The world will tempt you constantly to lose this center. You will be tested by absence, rejection, indifference, even betrayal. But these are not punishments. They are mirrors. And in that mirror, the question always arises: who am I now without this person, without this situation? You must understand attachment to anything outside of yourself is the beginning of slavery. When you crave to be seen, to be loved, to be chosen, you are declaring that your value comes from outside, not within. But you were never born to beg. You were never born to chase. You were born to create. Not in the outer world first, but within. The outer is simply a reflectional mirror of the inner assumptions you habitually accept as true. And so the man who masters emotional detachment becomes untouchable, not because he is numb, but because he feels deeply without drowning. He observes the storm and says, "This too shall pass." He watches the silence and says, "This is fertile ground." He sees the absence of someone he once loved and says, "In this space, I remember myself." There's no power in need, need declares. Lack, need, is a prayer to remain without. When you say, "I need her to return," you are declaring she is the source and you are the empty vessel. But when you say, "I am complete," the world reorganizes to match your wholeness. What you need, you repel. What you are, you attract. The beauty of emotional detachment is that it frees you to truly love, not from desperation, but from overflow. You are not waiting for someone to validate your worth. You are simply expressing the fullness of your being. And when that is your posture, you draw to yourself experiences and people that match that inner richness. But you cannot fake this. The universe does not respond to the surface, it responds to vibration. You can say all the right affirmations, but if your inner state is still aching for proof, the result will reflect the ache, not the words. You must feel it real. You must dwell in the state of "I am whole, I am enough, I am chosen," and not in the shallow repetition of words, but in the depth of silent being. This brings us to silence, the most misunderstood form of communication. Silence is not the absence of speech. It is the presence of mastery. It is the space where the soul speaks louder than the mouth. When you go silent, not as a game, but as a return to your own temple, you become magnetic. The world will not know what to do with you. They expect reactions, expect emotional outbursts, explanations, validation seeking. But when you offer none, you reveal the power of a sovereign being in silence. You are rebuilding. You are detaching the threads of identity from the past version of you who needed them. You are not ghosting to be cruel or disappearing to remember. Silence says, "I no longer feed that which doesn't feed me." It says, "I choose to dwell in the presence of my own becoming." And in that stillness, something sacred occurs. The world begins to feel your absence. Not the kind of absence that punishes, but the kind that awakens. They will wonder where you went, okay, but they will reach for your echo. But they will not find you in the place they left you, okay, because you have ascended in your vibration. You no longer orbit their sun, you have become your own star. This is not manipulation. This alchemy. You are transmuting emotional chaos into spiritual gold. You are no longer seeking to be hurting, are becoming the presence that no one can ignore, even in silence. You see, most people speak not to express truth, but to fill the void they cannot sit with. They explain themselves endlessly, hoping to be understood. But when you know who you are, you no longer need to explain. you no longer need to prove. The deepest truths are not spoken, they are lived. Okay. And your silence becomes a sermon. Every time you resist the urge to reach out, you are telling the universe, I trust in my inner reality more than the outer illusion. Every time you remain composed when provoked, you are affirming, my peace is not up for negotiation. And every time you go inward instead of outward, you are anchoring into the eternal truth that everything you seek already lives within you. Let the world say what it wants. Let them misunderstand you. Let them move on, because while they are distracted by the noise of new, you are becoming rare in your stillness. And rarity always returns to its rightful place. They may forget your name, but they will never forget your energy. And when they feel the contrast between your peace and the chaos they chose, they will crave to return not for closure, but for reunion with what they didn't value. But by then, you will have changed. You will not be bitter. You will be beyond. You will not seek revenge. You will radiate indifference, not the kind that comes from hurt, but the kind that comes from healing. And that indifference will humble them more than any outburst ever could. Do not confuse silence with passivity. You are not inactive, you are intentional. You are not hiding, you are harmonizing. You are not avoiding them, you are answering a higher call. Everything in your reality is responding to your state of being. To shift your world, you do not chase outcomes. You shift your state. And the man who has mastered this state is the man who cannot be replaced. He is not loud. He is not reactive. He is not needy. He is still. He is whole. He is magnetic. You do not win people back by proving your worth. You win yourself back. And in doing so, the universe must mirror your wholeness. Whether they return or not becomes irrelevant, because the true reward was never their present sit, was your own becoming. This is the silent revolution, not against them, but for you, not to change others, but to remember that you were never meant to beg. You were meant to be, fully, radiantly, unshakably. So detach and be silent, not to manipulate, but to transcend. For the man who no longer needs to be chosen comes the one they all return to. Asterisk, you were not born to orbit another, born to radiate from the center of your own being. The moment you make someone else your sun, you begin to revolve around shadows. True alignment occurs when you prioritize the purpose planted in your soul long before any person walked into your life. You did not come here to be someone's emotional supplement. You came here to express the fullness of a vision embedded deep within consciousness. That vision is not given to all, but to you alone. It is not a coincidence. It is a calling. Many are tempted to bend that purpose for companionship. They delay the pursuit of their highest self because they fear being alone. But in doing so, they abandon the very thing that would have made them unforgettable. You are not here to chase connection. You are here to become so deeply rooted in who you are that others cannot help but be drawn into your gravity. And if they are not drawn, they were never yours to begin with. When your life is built around someone else, you unconsciously declare that your meaning is external. And when they leave as, they often do you crumble because the scaffolding was never internal to begin with. But the one who aligns with their higher path builds something different, a life so purposeful, so focused, so self-sustaining that even love must earn its place within it. You are not a vessel waiting to be filled. We're the well from which rivers flow. People feel this difference. They know when your eyes are fixed on something beyond them, not out of neglect, but from a deeper calling. You're not absent, you're ascended. You're not cold, you're concentrated. And the rarest energy in this world is the man who cannot be distracted. Not because he doesn't feel, but because he has chosen. He has chosen mastery. He has chosen mission. He has chosen inner alignment over fleeting attention. There is nothing more haunting than the presence of someone who is fulfilled without needing. The world runs on hunger, validation, hunger, approval hungry. But when you have detached from that matrix, when you have risen above the frequency of craving, you emit something the world does not understand. And what it cannot understand, it cannot forget. People want to feel needed because it gives them control. But when they cannot find their hooks in you, they are forced to see you not as someone they possess, but as someone they lost access to. That shift, when someone realizes they are no longer your center, is subtle, but seismic. You did not announce it. You did not argue. You simply evolved past the point where their presence determined your peace. And this is where indifference becomes your fortress. Not the indifference of bitterness or resentment. That is merely unhealed pain pretending to be strength. True indifference arises when your inner state is no longer tethered to the outcomes others can give or take away. You no longer care, not because you are numb, but because you are whole. You care from fullness, not from fear. It confuses them. They expect drama. They expect a fight. They expect proof that they still have power. But what they find is silence. Not the silence of defeat, but the silence of sovereignty. And in that silence, they begin to question themselves, because you are not giving them anything to resist. You are simply gone mentally, emotionally, spiritually, not to wound them, but to return to your source. There is nothing louder than the absence of someone who once needed you, and nothing more humbling than realizing their indifference is not forced, but natural. That's when they look back. When the mind replays what once was. Because the mind cannot accept an open loop. It searches for resolution. And when you offer none, you become a living question in their mind. This is the essence of true power, not control over others, but full command over self. You don't need to manipulate. You don't need to prove. You don't need to show how far you've come. You only need to be. The reality you live in is governed not by what you do, but by who you are. And when you are rooted in purpose, wrapped in peace, and dripping with discipline, the external world must conform. It is tempting to want to be seen, to be understood. But the need to explain is often the last thread of attachment. When you release even that, you become unshakable. You are not as you are fire turned inward. And fire, when contained, is 1,000 times more powerful. You have stopped reacting. You have stopped performing. You have begun the deeper work, the work of being. Others will come, some from guilt, some from nostalgia, some from newly awakened appreciation. But that is not your concern. You no longer wait. You no longer expect. You simply allow. For what? It's meant to orbit your light will return not out of force, but resonance. And what does not? You bless silently. Not every loss is a curse. Some are CLEARINGS. To live with purpose over people is not to reject love. It is to prioritize alignment. It is to know that only love, which complements your path, is sustainable. Anything that demands you shrink, silence, or surrender your truth is not love. It is attachment wearing a mask. But when love flows with your mission, when it strengthens your direction, it becomes sacred. Those who have felt your energy and misjudged its value will come to recognize it in hindsight. Not because you punished them, but because you flourished without them. And your indifference, your calm, your peace will speak louder than any plea, louder than any confrontation. The world teaches you to chase, to perform, to prove. But the truth is, all things flow from state. The man who dwells in the state of I am already enough begins to attract only what aligns with that truth. He does not scramble. He does not plead. He does not lower himself to fit where. He has outgrown. In stillness, he transforms. In silence, he ascends. And in indifference, he becomes undeniable. Let others speak. Let them seek. Let them wonder. But you remain unmoved in your purpose. Remain untouched by flattery or rejection. Remain as the lighthouse that never chases ships, but still guides them home. Because the one who chooses himself without apology becomes the one no one can forget. And in time, even those who walked away will feel the silent truth. They did not leave you. They lost you. Asterisk, true strength is not loud. It is not performed. It does not need to prove itself to the world, for its foundation is internal and invisible. Man, who governs his own appetite, who walks with silent discipline, radiates a presence that cannot be faked. His words are few, but his energy speaks in volumes. He is not controlled by impulse, nor is he swayed by the temporary pleasures that steal the attention of the undirected. He has discovered the quiet power of inner command. There is no beauty in chaos. It may feel intoxicating for a moment, but it leads only to erosion. Discipline, however, builds the soul. It trains the inner eye to see beyond the surface. Every morning that begins with order, every evening that ends with intention, adds a brick to the temple within. What you practice in private becomes your power in public. Others sense this. They may not understand what it is they feel, but they are drawn to it nonetheless. To restrain oneself is not suppression. It is refinement. Like the man who abstains from indulgence is not deprived. He is focused. The world is full of those who consume endlessly, but are never full. Yet the one who withholds, who chooses wisely where to give his energy, discovers something most never touch depth. In a culture addicted to instant gratification, restraint becomes the most seductive quality. Not the restraint of fear, but the restraint of mastery. Those who are mastered by desire are forgettable. But the one who directs desire inward, who channels that fire toward purpose, becomes rare. He becomes magnetic. His presence is not frantic. It is composed. And that calmness causes others to lean in, to wonder what lives beneath the surface. They begin to feel that this man is not common. He cannot be lured by cheap attention, nor distracted by passing temptation. He has chosen a different path, one of creation, not consumption. This is the paradox. When you no longer seek to be attractive, you become it. When you no longer perform for validation, your very being radiates value. And what is behind this? Self-discipline. A soul aligned with a higher aim. A being who has remembered his role as the creator, not the follower. He does not scroll endlessly. He does not chase what does not serve. He does not entertain what insults his future. Not because he is better, but because he is aware. Awareness births responsibility. Once you see the patterns that drain your energy, you can no longer pretend to be a victim of them. Discipline becomes the vehicle through which you rise. It is not imposed from outside. It is chosen from within. And when it is chosen, it feels like freedom. You no longer bounce between moods and circumstances. You dwell in a steadiness that cannot be disturbed. And others, though they may not say it, notice this vibration. They compare it silently to the instability around them and realize there is something uncommon here. Self-discipline is the altar where the future is shaped. It is in the simple acts, waking early, nourishing the mind, keeping promises to the self, moving the body with respect, speaking less, but meaning more. Asterisk. These are the rituals of kings. These are the invisible acts that construct an aura so powerful, people sense your presence before you enter the room. It is not what you wear or what you say, it's what you practice when no one is watching. And yet, discipline is only half the revelation. The other is space. Not the kind that creates distance out of pride, but the kind that returns you to your own center. In that space, you meet yourself again. Time may dull pain, but it is space that reshapes identity. Without space, time simply passes. But with space, time transforms. Most fear silence because it reveals the self. Most fear solitude because it strips away distraction. But you must not fear the mirror. You must embrace the stillness, because within it lies the blueprint of your becoming. It is in that space that all the old identities rise to the surface, begging to be released. You will feel the ache of absence. Yes, but you will also discover the presence of something more ancient, more complete, more you than you have ever known. Space is not separation. It is sacred ground. It is the place where old attachments die and new visions are born. When someone leaves or drifts away, the world will tempt you to fill that void quickly. But do not rush. Do not seek distraction. Do not drown yourself in noise to avoid the lessons hidden in the silence. The man who can sit with himself without needing anything external begins to move differently. He walks into rooms with the weight of wisdom, not because he learned more, but because he unlearned everything that no longer served in space. You begin to understand the nature of energy, how you give it, where you spend it, who receives it. You begin to see that not everyone deserves access. Not every message needs to be answered. Not every presence deserves your light. Space teaches you boundaries, not the kind spoken, but the kind felt. People begin to sense that their access to you must be earned. And it is this shift that changes everything. You stop begging for attention. You stop proving your worth. Stop needing to be chosen. Because in space, you remembered you were never incomplete. You were simply distracted from your own sufficiency. And now, with clarity returned, you move in silence. Not out of spite, but out of sacred preservation. Not to wound, but to witness your own rebirth. Others will notice this change. They will sense the distance, feel the difference. Some will test it. Others will be drawn to it. You will not be moved, for you are no longer responding from the old identity. You are not the same. You are not waiting for closure. You are the closure. You are not hoping for a return. You have returned to yourself. This is the essence of maturity, holding space for your own transformation. Not collapsing into loneliness, not reaching in desperation, but standing in solitude like a mountain. The world may spin. People may shift. Emotions may arise, but you remain. You watch. You learn. You expand. And so, time and space become your allies. Time gives you distance. Space gives you depth. And the two together create a man unrecognizable to his former self. A man no longer shaped by the tides of relationships, but by the stillness of inner truth. The one who does not flinch in silence. The one who does not chase noise. The one who does not forget who he is when alone. Let the world see chaos. Let others perform and pursue. You, however, will remain in discipline and space. And in doing so, you become the presence that cannot be explained, only experienced. The one they feel long after they've gone. The one they remember not for what he said, but for what he withheld. Not for the drama he brought, but for the peace he carried. You are not missing. You are becoming. You are not distant. You are dwelling. You are not lost. You are locating yourself again. And when you emerge, come steady. For everything that belongs to your new frequency will meet you. Not because you chased it, but because you matched it. Remain in the work, not because others are watching, but because you have seen the value of inner discipline and the sacredness of space. And from that place, all things will return. Asterisk, you cannot rise while tethered to a memory. What was once love may now be only habit, and habit is not destiny. The true work is not in making someone return, but in no longer needing them to. You must build a life so whole, so rich in purpose, so aligned with your essence, that even the echo of their absence becomes silence to you. Not because you have forced yourself to forget, but because you have remembered something deeper than longing. The reality that you are complete. There is a secret law within, what you no longer seek. begins to seek you. The need for anyone fades when you no longer assign them as the source. They were never the light. They were the mirror. And if the mirror has cracked or disappeared, the light within still remains. Begin there. Build, not from the ruins of what was, but from the foundation of what is now. What you choose today shapes not just tomorrow, but the state of your being. This is not distraction. It is resurrection. The mind that fixates on the past carries the weight of time. But the man who begins again in the present moment steps out of the timeline completely. He is no longer governed by what happened, becomes governed by what he assumes now. The old memories lose their grip, not by force, but by disuse. You do not fight them, you replace them. You plant new seeds. You create new movements. You establish rituals that make the past irrelevant. And as this new life grows, it becomes the new atmosphere of your mind. You do not miss them because you are too focused on what you are becoming. You are not empty. You are occupied with the shaping of a vision, the pursuit of meaning, the joy of mastery. You rise early. You care for the temple. You study the thoughts that pass through you, and you align with only the ones that reflect your higher nature. Slowly, almost without effort, the person who once dominated your inner world fades into the background. They are no longer the center. You are. The power is in the pivot, not in waiting, not in wondering, not in hoping for a change in them, but in choosing transformation for yourself. This pivot is sacred. It is a shift from lack to fullness, from waiting to creating. And when you build from this place, you do not build to impress, to prove, or to win back. You build because it is your nature to create. This act is not personal. It is spiritual. You are expressing what already lives in you and what you build. When it is truly born of inner vision, begins to shape the external world, not immediately, but inevitably. The people you attract begin to mirror the new assumptions, the circumstances, change to accommodate your elevated state. This is the great truth hidden in plain sight. You are not rebuilding your life to cope with loss. You are revealing the life that was always waiting beneath the distractions. In this emergence, there is no need to erase memories. You simply cease to feed them. They dissolve on their own. The energy they once held is now being used for something more divine. You are directing it into your craft, into your presence, into your becoming. And this inner redirection becomes the invisible architecture of a life that does not need anyone to feel whole. Wholeness becomes your default. Yet this rebuilding does not happen in noise. It does not announce itself. It begins quietly, in the shadows, in the silence. The world will not see it at first, and that is how it should be. For true transformation is not performed. It is lived. It does not need witness to be real. It requires only commitment and inner belief. That is the sacred silence where the rebirth begins. Silence is not absence. It is gestation. It is the dark soil in which roots take form. When you pull away from the world, not in bitterness, but in reverence, you begin to remember your original blueprint. The version of you untouched by trauma, free from need, awake to purpose. Phase that version has never left. It was simply buried beneath the noise of wanting. In silence, there are no distractions. You begin to hear your own thoughts, and more importantly, to select which ones are worthy of life. You observe without reacting. You detach without pain. You become intimate with your own inner world. And what you touch within, you eventually embody without. The rebuilding is not about doing. It is about being. The outer shifts are inevitable, but the true movement is internal. You do not post about the change. You do not announce your growth. You do not demand recognition. You simply continue, step by step, breath by breath, returning to your center. And in that return, you find everything you once thought you needed from another. you find your own attention, your own love, your own power. And this self-sufficiency becomes your silence. Others feel it before they see it. It speaks to them in ways words never could. They begin to wonder where you went, not physically, but energetically. They begin to feel the void because your energy no longer reaches them. Not in anger, not in punishment, but in neutrality. You have withdrawn not from emotion, but from identification. Me. And this indifference is not cold, it is clear. It says, I no longer live there. The rebuilding continues. Every day, you refine the self-image. You no longer call yourself broken. You no longer replay the story of abandonment. You rewrite, not with denial, but with dominion. You declare new truths not in public, but in the stillness of your inner chamber, and the world, always a mirror, begins to reflect them. The ones who left, or overlooked, or misjudged may reappear. But by then, you are no longer the same. They come not because you chased, but because your absence became louder than your presence. Because your silence became a song of self-respect. And when they return to a different vibration. Whether they stay or go no longer matters. What matters is that you are now the creator of your experience. This is the final liberation, when you realize they were never the source. Your peace was never outside. It was simply buried beneath layers of seeking. And now that you have returned to it, everything that comes must align with it toward. It falls away on its own. There is no effort, no force, no resistance, just frequency, just truth. To build a life that doesn't miss them is not to erase the past. It is to no longer depend on it for identity. To rebuild in silence is not to hide it. It's to honor what is sacred. And what is sacred does not beg, does not prove, does not chase. It creates, it holds, it becomes. You are not rebuilding because you were broken. You are remembering what was always whole. And the more you remember, the less you need. The less you need, the more you magnetize. This is the law. This is the way. This is the return to self, to source, to sovereignty.